When I was 10, I left everything familiar behind and moved to my dad's place in a strange new town. The only people I knew were a family he was close to, a single mum raising 3 kids on her own. Among them was a girl, 2 years my senior at 12, who caught my attention. Over a couple of years, we circled each other, never quite close, but tethered by shared friends, our lives brushing like leaves in the wind. One fateful night, my buddy Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother in their quiet, empty house. Their mum, a kind soul who worked late, was out, leaving the kids alone. Through her job, she'd grown close to a woman whose sister had just been released from a mental institution, a detail that hung in the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. That night, a knock rattled the door. The girl, expecting her mom's familiar tap, flung it open without a second thought. Rob, who wasn't supposed to be there, panicked and bolted through a window, racing to his house down the road, oblivious to the shadow he'd left behind. But it wasn't her mum at the door. It was the woman's sister, her mind twisted, her intentions dark. She'd pieced together the family's address and their mom's schedule, stalking her prey with chilling precision. What happened next is a void I'm grateful not to see. The younger brother, quick and brave, slipped out and sprinted to a neighbor's to summon the police, but it was too late for my friend. Just a week before Christmas, Delaney, the unhinged intruder, committed an unspeakable act, brutally murdering her, severing her head, and leaving her body defiled in a bathtub. In a final grotesque twist, she hid the girl's head among the Christmas presents, a macabre secret uncovered only after a grim search. I was barred from her funeral, left to grapple with the horror from afar, the weight of her absence, a silent scream in my heart. Winter shadows stretched long across the path as Evelyn made her way back from the library, the chill in the air sharpening with every step. At 78, she wasn't as fast as she used to be, but she refused to let age slow her down. Not after losing Henry, not after a year of learning how to breathe again. That's why she'd turned down the ride. Determined, "I need the walk," she'd said, "keeps me strong." The trees whispered around her, bare branches clawing at the fading light. Then, footsteps. Not just footsteps, his footsteps. Close, too close. She didn't turn, didn't panic. Evelyn had lived long enough to know when a man's stride meant trouble. Her fingers tightened around her purse. Inside, cold steel waited. Almost home. She could see the glow of her porch light now, just ahead. Safety. But then, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, whispering, "Okay, don't turn around," a voice hissed, "and hand over your purse or I'll cut you." Evelyn stopped, inhales deeply, took a breath, then one long step forward, a pivot, a flash of fire in the dark. The .38 roared. The man crumpled, clutching his throat. He'd live for 5 more years, prison hospitals and surgeries, before the wound finally stole his last breath. And Evelyn? She lived another decade and a half, but until the very end she'd shake her head and mutter the same regret. I should have let him speak one more word. Then she'd smile, just a little. When I was a kid, probably 8 to 11 or so, my sister, 7 years my senior, took charge whenever my parents stepped out for the evening. She was a chain smoker back then, but Mum and Dad banished her habit to the backyard. Naturally, I'd trail after her, bouncing around, pestering her with my endless kid energy. One chilly night, as she puffed away, her eyes caught something eerie. A white SUV parked at the end of our driveway, idling on the quiet road. It had a bike rack perched on top and windows tinted so dark they swallowed the light. You couldn't glimpse a soul inside. The SUV lingered, silent and still, until my sister stubbed out her cigarette and headed inside. Then, like a predator slinking off, it glided down the road to the church parking lot at the corner, where it sat, waiting. The moment she stepped out for another smoke, it crept back. This strange dance repeated itself, unsettling but oddly ignorable. At least to my fearless sister, she shrugged it off, tough as nails. But the next day, with our parents gone again, that same SUV returned. its presence heavier now, like a storm cloud, refusing to break. It just sat there watching her. I could feel it, even if I didn't understand it. Sometimes I'd stay inside, peering through the front window, and there it was, motionless, fixated on my sister as she smoked. It wasn't just a car, it felt alive, predatory. She finally told our dad, a sheriff's deputy with a no-nonsense streak. He called the police, filed a complaint, and they came to investigate. But the SUV vanished like it had never been there. Months passed, quiet, uneventful months. We almost forgot. Then, 9 months after that first sighting, 4 since the last, it slithered back into our lives. It became a grim routine, showing up unannounced, always watching. One day, my sister, fed up with the silent menace, decided that enough was enough. "Stay by the carport," she told me, her voice sharp with resolve. She marched toward the SUV, each step defiant, but halfway down the driveway she froze. Later she'd confess, "It was like a wave of terror crashed over me. I knew if I took one more step, I was dead." Paralyzed by primal fear, she turned and fled inside. Time dragged on, and our family car broke down, trapping us at home one night. My parents were there, thank God. My sister went out to smoke and I tagged along, oblivious to the danger. Sure enough, the SUV rolled up, its presence suffocating. "Go get Dad," she whispered urgently. I bolted inside, words tumbling out as I told him. My father, calm but deadly serious, grabbed his gun and strode down the driveway, weapon in hand but not raised. The SUV's engine roared to life, and it tore off, tires screeching as it hit the highway. Dad, ever the cop, memorized its year, model, and every detail he could. The most chilling part? Its license plate was smothered in duct tape, erasing any trace of identity. We never saw it again. But the memory of that white SUV, lurking like a ghost in the night, still sends a shiver down my spine. The summer heat stuck to our apartment like a sweaty hand over my mouth. I was 5, still tasting the sharp metal of my parents' divorce in the back of my throat. That night, the air was so thick I could feel it crawling into my lungs as I pressed against my mother's side, refusing to sleep in my own room across the hall. The window behind Mom's bed gaped open like a hungry mouth, sucking in the humid night. I woke to the prickle of something watching us. Our cat sat rigid in the doorway, his black fur standing straight up. In the dim light, his pupils were bottomless pits. He stared into my bedroom, the one I'd refused to sleep in, and let out a sound no house cat should make. Not a meow, a strangled warning. Then he slunk into the darkness of my room and vanished. 3 heartbeats passed before I shook Mom awake. When we looked back, the man was already stepping out of my bedroom. I didn't see his face, just the way the shadows clung to him like they knew him, the way his silhouette didn't quite match the walls behind him, the way the air turned sour where he stood. Mom moved faster than I'd ever seen. 1 second I was clutching her nightgown, the next I was tumbling through the screen window, the jagged edges tearing at my pajamas as the night swallowed me whole. She came flying after, her scream shredding the silence. "He's been inside with us!" The police found nothing. No broken locks, no fingerprints, just our front door swinging gently on its hinges, though Mom swore on her mother's grave she'd thrown the deadbolt and chain. A week later, cleaning out the water heater closet, her blood ran cold. A spiral notebook, its pages filled with meticulous notes in handwriting that changed every few lines. Gloves that didn't belong to us, and dozens of gum wrappers, carefully folded into tiny, perfect squares. The detective's face went grey. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "how long have you lived here?" Years later, the basement still smelled of that night, of sweat and fear and something metallic. I was doing laundry when the single bulb in the far room blew with a soft pop. Darkness rushed in like a living thing. I held my breath, counting steps, 16 paces to the stairs. I'd made it to 8 when I heard it, a wet, gurgling chuckle right behind my ear. Not just a laugh, the sound of something pretending to remember how laughter works. Hot breath touched my neck. It smelled like old gum and copper. I didn't scream, didn't turn. I ran faster than I'd ever moved in my life, my sneakers slapping against the concrete as something whispered from the darkness, "You left your light on." The bulb was perfectly intact when my father checked. Now I keep all the lights burning, and sometimes, when I'm alone, I catch the faintest scent of spearmint gum right before the power goes out. In 2018, My cousin Lisa, a night shift nurse, rented a creaky old house in a sleepy Ohio suburb. The place was a steal, but its sagging floors and stale, musty air carried a faint menace. Alone most nights, Lisa started noticing unsettling details. A glass she swore she'd washed sitting on the counter, a door cracked open when she knew she'd locked it tight. Exhausted from 12-hour shifts, she blamed her foggy mind. One night, after a brutal shift, she dragged herself home at 3 a.m. and collapsed into bed. A guttural scratching woke her, clawing from the attic directly above. It wasn't random, it had a rhythm like something carving with intent into the wood. Heart hammering, she grabbed her phone's flashlight and crept to the attic's pull-down ladder. The hatch was locked, yet the scratching grew louder, deliberate, pausing as if it heard her. "Who's there?" she whispered. The silence that followed was worse, thick, alive, like something holding its breath. Too terrified to climb up, she retreated, clutching a knife from the kitchen. The noises escalated. Scratching became heavy thumps, like boots stalking above her bed each night. Lisa felt eyes boring into her, even in her sleep, as if the walls themselves watched. Her landlord scoffed, muttering about old house quirks, but offered no help. Desperate, Lisa borrowed a ladder one evening and forced herself into the attic. The air was suffocating, thick with dust and something sour. Her flashlight swept over forgotten boxes, then froze on a corner pile of ragged blankets arranged like a nest. Her blood turned to ice. With a trembling broom handle, she prodded the pile. It collapsed, revealing a stained mattress, a moldy bag of chips, and a tattered notebook. Its pages listed her work schedule, exact shift times, dates, scrawled notes, like "she's gone, bedroom light off at 2:17, and chillingly, "she sleeps so still." Lisa's scream caught in her throat. She called the police, who found the attic vent pried open, smudged fingerprints on the notebook, and faint scratches on the floorboards, like claw marks. No one was there, but the cops confirmed someone had been living up there, slipping in when she left for work. Lisa fled to a friend's house, never returning. Weeks later, a neighbor whispered they'd seen a figure skulking in her backyard at night, always when she was gone. The house is rented again now, but I can't stop imagining that thing in the attic, watching, waiting for the next tenant to fall asleep, its scratches echoing in the dark, closer each night. A friend of mine, let's call her Soo-jin, shared a bone-chilling story with me about a year ago. In her early 20s, Soo-jin works as an English tutor in South Korea, guiding high schoolers through the maze of grammar and vocabulary. One humid evening a few years back, she was deep in a late-night tutoring session with a teenage boy. The clock ticked past the last bus, and with his home miles away, the kid pleaded to crash on her floor until the first morning bus. Soo-jin's gut screamed no. Having a teenage guy sleepover felt like inviting trouble, but his desperate begging wore her down and she caved. They trudged to her cramped one-room apartment. Soo-jin climbed into bed, while the boy spread a blanket on the floor. Exhaustion pulled them both under fast, but around 2 a.m., a voice jolted Soo-jin awake. "I'm starving," the boy said, looming over her. "Let's grab some food." She squinted at him, groggy and annoyed. "Food? It's 2 a.m., go back to sleep." He wouldn't let up. "No, I'm so hungry, let's eat now." Rolling her eyes, she pointed out some ramen in the kitchen, but he brushed it off. "Not ramen, there's a 24-hour diner just down the road, come on, let's go." After minutes of his relentless nagging, Soo-jin, half asleep and irritated, gave in. They stepped out into the quiet street, the night air thick with unease. Barely a few steps from the apartment, the boy stopped dead and turned to her, his face pale. "I'm not hungry," he whispered. "I woke up in the night and looked under your bed. There's a man sleeping there." The words hit like a punch. They called the police, hearts pounding. When the cops arrived, they found the unthinkable. A homeless man had been living in Soo-jin's apartment, curled up under her bed for 2 months. The boy only spotted him because his spot on the floor gave him a clear view into the shadows beneath. That night, Soo-jin's reluctant decision to let the boy stay might have saved her from a nightmare she didn't even know she was living. I was cruising a lonely shortcut from Barstow, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico, slicing through the desolate high desert east of LA. This stretch of 2-lane road was a ribbon of asphalt cutting through absolute nothingness, save for a fleeting pass through Ludlow, a ghost town perched nearly as low as Death Valley's sunken depths. It was mid-afternoon, the sun blazing, and I was alone, winding my way up into the rugged mountain range between Ludlow and I-40. As I crested the top, the road dipped into a narrow canyon, flanked by towering grass, swaying like silent sentinels on both sides. Up ahead, something broke the monotony of the empty road. I eased off the gas, squinting as the scene came into focus. A red Pontiac Fiero sat sideways, blocking both lanes, its trunk gaping open with a suitcase spilling clothes across the pavement. Two bodies, a man and a woman, lay face down in the dirt, motionless. My stomach churned. I stopped my car about 100 feet back, the hair on my neck prickling like static. As a Marine, instinct kicked in. I reached under the seat, pulled out my 9mm pistol, and chambered around, my pulse thudding in my ears. Something was off, way off. The scene looked too perfect, like a stage set for a trap, an ambush straight out of a nightmare. I scanned the road, my eyes tracing a narrow path to escape. If I swung left around the man, then veered right past the woman and behind the Fiero, I could slip through. Heart pounding, I dropped into first gear, gunned the engine, and threaded the needle. Tires humming as I cleared the car, and the bodies without so much as a graze. A couple 100 feet later, I eased up, letting my breath catch and my heart stop hammering. But then, in the rearview mirror, the world tilted. The two bodies were rising to their knees, and from the tall grass on both sides of the road, 20 or so figures emerged, slinking toward the Fiero like shadows coming to life. My foot slammed the gas to the floor, the engine roaring as I tore down the road. I didn't let up until the I-40 East on-ramp forced me to slow. My hands shook, but my mind raced with one haunting thought. What would have happened if I'd stepped out to check on those bodies, or pulled up any closer? I'll never know, but the memory of that staged scene in the desert still stalks me, a chilling reminder of the danger I narrowly escaped. A few buddies and I were out night fishing on the Rappahannock River, sprawled along the shoreline with a crackling fire casting dancing shadows around us. The air was thick with the hum of idle chatter and the clink of beer cans, our laughter echoing softly over the water. Then, like someone yanked the plug on our carefree vibe, silence slammed down. Every head turned, eyes locked across the dark river, gripped by an unshakable feeling that something or someone was staring back from the void. Unease coiled in our guts, though a couple of guys tried to shrug it off with forced macho jokes. Then it came, a sound so raw and blood-curdling it ripped through the night, freezing us where we sat. It wasn't an animal, not like anything I'd ever heard. It was primal, like a voiceless savage being torn apart. A high-pitched wail that made my skin crawl and every hair stand on end. We sat paralyzed, staring into the darkness across the water, not a word among us. Then, a second scream shattered the silence, even louder, more desperate, clawing at our nerves. That snapped us into action. A few of us bolted for the trucks parked just yards away, grabbing rifles and shotguns, hearts pounding like war drums. Back at the fire, we huddled, eyes glued to the opposite shore where the flames' glow flickered off the rocks. We waited, breathless, for another sign, a rustle, a shadow, anything. Then, out of nowhere, a third scream tore through the night. This time from our side of the river, erupting from bushes barely a yard away. Panic hit like a freight train. We scrambled, abandoning gear rods, cool as everything, and sprinted for the trucks. As we piled in, one final bone-chilling wail echoed from just beyond the tree line. Tires squealed, engines roared, and we floored it, tearing away from that cursed spot. Whatever was out there, shrieking in the dark, we never found out, and I'm not sure I ever want to. It was a bone-chilling Friday night when my friend's car screeched up to my house, late for the hockey game in the city. We were laughing, music blaring, tearing through the dark streets. So caught up in the moment, I didn't notice my phone was missing. I clawed through the car seats, floor, every crevice, but it was gone. I convinced myself I'd left it at home, but a gnawing unease took root. At the game, the worry festered like a wound. I couldn't shake the thought I'd dropped it somewhere, so I snatched my friend's phone and bolted to the bathroom, hands trembling as I dialed my number. praying someone at home would answer. 3 rings echoed, each one tightening the knot in my chest. Then, a click. Someone picked up. Silence. No greeting, no breathing, just a void on the other end that felt alive with malice. "Hello," I shouted, voice cracking. "I'm checking if I left my phone at home." Nothing. I pictured my little brother messing with me, but the stillness on the line felt wrong, like a predator holding its breath. I hung up, heart thudding, and tried to shove the dread aside. I stumbled back home late, the house swallowed in darkness. No parents, no little brother, just an oppressive quiet. I called my folks, and their words hit like ice. They'd gone out to eat and catch a concert at the park with my brother, leaving right after I'd headed to the game. They wouldn't be back for another half hour. My mind reeled. If they weren't home, who or what answered my phone? The realization clawed at me, and then I heard it. The back door creaked open and slammed shut with a thud that echoed like a gunshot. Terror seized me. I didn't think. I ran, bare feet pounding the cold floor, out the front door to the neighbor's house, my breath ragged as I dialed the police. They found the back door ajar, no signs of a break-in, no valuables taken. But the truth was a nightmare. Someone had slipped into our home, answered my phone, and lurked in the shadows. The thought that still haunts me, crawling up my spine in the dead of night, is that we could have drifted off to sleep with that stranger inside, watching, waiting, their presence a silent threat in the dark. A while back, a new family settled next door, dragging a darkness with them. Their 19-year-old son was a walking nightmare, obsessed with slasher flicks, pestering me with twisted questions about my Vietnam War days, details no sane person would crave. Worse, he tormented stray animals, a sick gleam in his eyes. This guy was unhinged. My daughter, just 7, caught his attention, and that's where the real dread began. He'd linger by the fence, chatting her up as she played in the backyard, or intercept her on her walk home from school. When he had the nerve to call our house asking for her, I lost it. I stormed over, tore into him and his parents, and warned him to stay the hell away from her, or he'd regret it. That's when the air turned sour. My little girl, always a bit imaginative, had a habit of seeing monsters under her bed or in the shadows. So when she started whispering about something living in her closet, too terrified to call out at night, but swearing it vanished by day, we chalked it up to kid fears. We should have listened. Weeks later, my wife and daughter were off for a girls' night at my mom's, leaving me alone. I flicked on the HBO box, sank into the couch with some movies, and dozed off. At 2 a.m., the phone's shrill ring yanked me awake. It was the neighbor, the creep's mom, her voice shaky. "We saw you were up, so we called. Our son's missing. His room's empty, door wide open. Unusual for him. We need help finding him." I blinked, disoriented. "What do you mean, saw me up?" I'd been dead to the world on the couch. "He saw you upstairs," she said. "The lights on in your daughter's room." Ice flooded my veins. No one was home, no lights were on. I slammed the phone down, bolted outside to grab my shotgun from the truck, and froze. Sheriff's lights were flashing next door. I raced over, words tumbling out. Someone was in my house. From the street, I saw it, a silhouette pacing in my daughter's room, the light glowing like a sick promise. Deputies stormed in and found him, the neighbor's son, nestled in her closet with a makeshift lair. His chilling words still haunt me. "I like watching her sleep in the moonlight.